Hello, class. Welcome back. AMH 2020. This video is meant to explain the notebook project, and I hope that if you have any questions, you'll follow up. You'll send me, feel free to send me messages on Canvas, and I'll get to them right away. But essentially, the notebook is a quarter of your grade. It is worth 100 points by the end of the semester, and there are 5 instances in which I will give you a grade for that for your efforts, and those 5 instances basically add up to the 100 points. So let me move this out of the way, and let me show you what I'm talking about. Get the focus here. Okay, so there we go. All right. So let's talk about what do you need for this. First of all, you need a composition notebook. This is basically what I mean by a composition notebook. It's your typical sort of black and white, although it doesn't have to be black and white. It could be any color, whatever you feel, or whatever you can find. Um, and it doesn't have to be of this particular print or type. Here is a UCF branded one. But basically, what makes it a composition notebook is that it is stitched along the inside. It is usually cardboard with paper inside. And ideally, you want it to be college ruled. That'll give you more lines per page. The one I'm using right now is wide ruled, and I'll show you the difference between these. So this one is college ruled. You can see the difference, that there are more lines. If you can see it clearly, there are more lines in the same space, so you get more lines to write on. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. I recommend the college rule, but if you can only find the wide rule, that's fine. Um, 80 pages, I would say that's minimum. Um, some students in the past have gone well past 100 pages or 100 sheets. In this case, I think 80 pages is probably good enough for the 6 weeks of class that we have ahead of us. And essentially, what you're going to do with this, okay, and you have creative control over this. The purpose is that at the end of the semester, you will have your own book to reference, your own textbook of sorts, right? You could think of it as a memento of the course, a souvenir to take with you, as a source of reference. But it's essentially going to be your own little textbook, a DIY custom textbook that you get to make. If you are into bullet journaling, journaling of any kind, this may feel a little bit like that, and you're welcome to sort of take that approach to it. I think that that would be helpful. But ultimately, what I want to do is kind of force you to take notes, force you to expend some energy taking notes, putting it down. Um, every single resource of science that's out there that has looked at the retention of information, that has studied note taking, that has studied, basically says it doesn't matter as long as you are doing it physically. In other words, note taking in a notebook is 1,000 times more effective than doing it on a computer screen or on a cell phone. And so this is sort of forcing you to do that. Um, I would have suggested this as just, do it voluntarily, but I've decided this is mandatory. This is a grade. This is what you have to do. Okay. So you need a brand new composition notebook, and we are going to set it up so that it'll be basically your notebook for an ever and ever. Right. So the first thing we need to do is skip the first page for now. We're going to put in your information and so forth, but for now, we're going to skip that first sheet, leave it blank. And let me make some space here. We're another space here. Okay. And the first thing you want is after that first sheet is start with a table of contents. Okay. Now I'm using a red pen because it shows up very well on camera. And but do whatever color you'd like, black, blue, you can use pencil or even colored pencils. That's perfectly fine. And I am not grading your penmanship. So you can, I'm kind of writing a bit extended so I can keep it in front of the camera. My arm is all the way extended out. So my handwriting is a little bit better than that typically, but it doesn't really matter for this. So this table of contents, we're going to make this page number 2, right? And what I want you to do is for each of these, you're going to write your last name. So we're going to do Delise number 2, which would make this Delise number 3, and this Delise number 4. We'll do a couple more. Delise 5. Delise 6. So why am I doing the last name? One, because I want you to remember that this is how you do proper page numbers when you're doing an academic report, right? So when you turn in your papers, you will remember that you are putting your last name next to the page number. So this is kind of practice to that. The other practical reason for this is so that later when you take pictures of this, that I'll be able to identify your work by the last name on the corner. So your table of contents is going to include the title and the page number of everything that you will include in this notebook. And so let me show you some examples of this. I'll put this out of the way. I'm going to bring in, this is another student's table of contents. This is from an American history course, just like this one. This student, however, was not attending class. They were using the textbook. That is not recommended for this class. You need to follow sort of the lectures and the materials that I place online. Here's another one. This is from a world history class. Again, how you do this, how you approach it is up to you, but basically I'm looking for the title of the content, whatever it is, and then the page number where I can find it. So for example, this should say Dharmic religions, pages 19 through 21. I should be able to turn to page 19. And here we have page 19, Dharmic religions, through page 20, through page 21. So perfect. That's what I want to be able to do with your notebooks. Now, of course, we're dealing with an online medium here, so it's going to be a little bit different how you turn this in. But just to be clear, when it comes to your table of contents, when it comes to the content itself, even the outward appearance of this, I would recommend that you do a little bit to decorate it, to make it your own, to make it your. By the way, these are here just to cover the names of the students. I have about 5 notebooks from last semester of students that never got around to picking up their notebooks, but that gives me the opportunity to actually show them off to you. So this particular student um, definitely decorated it, right? So that's great. Um, you can do as much of that as you like or not at all. That's up to you. I recommend you do because again, the more you put into it, the more likely you are to remember the information that you are including here. So let's start, right? If we have table of contents beginning in page 2, I want to show you that in most cases, not in this case, but in most cases, students took multiple pages, required more than just, here's 2 pages, the student took one page, but they're using College World, um, and they um, and they were able to fit 68 items in there. This student has 2 pages also. It looks like they ended up in Christianity. They probably could have added more to that since we went all the way to Christopher Columbus in that class. See one more here. Here's another example table of contents. I really like that they use different colors. I believe that they were using a pen like this one that has multiple colors, and so that's not necessary, but it's I think it's neat when a student sort of is able to use colors to make information stand out more. That's especially helpful when you're studying to be able to sort of pinpoint what is really important, either by blocking it off or writing arrows like this, like all of that. It's just made so much easier to visually see and to make sense of if you're using color. So make use of some highlighters or some markers, whatever you want. I will warn you, however, that when you're using color, but using a marker, so here the word table, it'll bleed through. So you want to be careful with how you use markers because you might be damaging content in other pages, right? So for this case, we're going to say table of contents. We're going to add over here table of contents. Continued. Okay. And so we're going to reserve this for other items in the table of contents. It might be necessary to add another page. Again, that's not an issue for most students. Maybe one or two students may find that they've run out of space quicker than others, especially if you're using a wide ruled notebook. But nevertheless, keep 2 pages open um, so that you have that flexibility. Okay. And that's basically the setup. I think by the end of the semester, I might ask you to add a glossary at the end, but I'm not ready to do that yet. So um, we're going to continue the page numbers all the way through. So just remember that for everything you add, you want to add a page numbers, right? Now, let's go ahead and start with the first bit of content that I want you to place in your notebook, and that is a timeline. So I'm going to draw this timeline here. And once again, use whatever colors work for you best. I'm going to switch here to a blue now. And in this case, I'm going to put here the year 1860. 1860 is the year in which Abraham Lincoln is elected U.S. president. And of course, that is one of the triggers that sets off the Civil War. So here during this period up to 1865, we have the outbreak and resolution finally of the Civil War. So 1860, Abraham Lincoln is elected, and then we have the Civil War that ends in 1865, right? And so if we continue this all the way up to the present, all the way over here, right? What we're creating here, having this timeline is, excuse me, is a grand timeline of AMH 2020. In other words, we can basically map out the entire term here. So from the Civil War, we get a period after the Civil War known as Reconstruction. And this period of Reconstruction basically comes to an end roughly in 1877. 1877 is the year in which the army is pulled out of the South, and officially Reconstruction comes to an end. In reality, there are some aspects of Reconstructions that end before 1877, and there are some aspects of Reconstruction that outlast the actual official end of the policy of Reconstruction. But for the most part, the federally established period of Reconstruction under the federal policies to reunite the country after the Civil War, those last for this period of about 12 years after the Civil War. And then from 1877 forward, we essentially have what we call the discussion of the West, right? But in actuality, right, if we're going to talk about the West, right, the West is usually deemed to be done, right, in 1890. In other words, this is what's known as the Turner thesis, right? That the West has closed, that there are no more frontier lands in the United States by 1890. And so this is taken by many historians as sort of a good date, that where we can say, okay, the period of the westward expansion of the United States has come to an end in 1890. However, it does begin much earlier. In fact, we could go back at least to 1804 to start talking about westward expansion. But all of this entire period is this period in which we see all manner of government policies, the Homestead Act, the Railway Act, the Indian Wars, the U.S. Indian Wars. All of this, the rise of the cowboys, the ranching lands of the West, the railroad lines throughout the West, the rise of mining in the Southwest, this entire period of westward expansion. And it's during this period and during the period of Reconstruction, I'm going to see if I can use a different color. Um, but during this period, I'm going to start here in the Reconstruction and take this out. This is industrialization. And industrialization basically goes on. In other words, we have what's called the Industrial Revolution, the beginnings of industrialization. So maybe we should represent this more as a curve. But in any case, industrialization is a major shift in American economics and the way of life for a lot of people. I recognize that that is hard to see. So let me just kind of dot this in. Industrialization. And so the rise of factory work and so forth, and that continues well into the 20th century. You could argue that it never ends, right? Industrialization is basically going to continue on. And even though at some point we begin talking about the nuclear age and the information technology, and so forth, all of those things are sort of built upon the industrial age itself. And so the industrialization doesn't go away as much as it then becomes the platform upon which other things are built. Um, but during this period of the late 1870s through the 1890s into the early 1900s, this is the period in which we see the rise of labor organizing, right? Meaning labor unions and so forth, the rise of the populist movement, the rise of the progressive movement or progressivism. All of these things are basically going to ride this wave with industrialization and again continue on after the period of progressivism, of populism, all of that. This will continue. The biggest break to this continuation, however, will come around in 1914. I'm going to put 1914 right here. 1914. And 1914, surely some of you already know, this is the beginning of World War One. And so from 1914 until roughly 1919, if we consider the signing of the Treaty of Versailles as the end of the war, not just the armistice in 1918. But if we go all the way to 1919, and this is World War One, right? Then after World War One, we have what is called the interwar years, right? And so the interwar years last roughly until we enter World War Two. And so World War Two we'll put here as 1941, although the war begins in 39. This is when the US enters the war, until 1945, which is when we drop the atomic bombs on Japan. And so this is the period of World War Two. And so this period in between is what's called the interwar period. Otherwise, the period of the roaring 20s and the Great Depression. And so World War One, the interwar period, World War Two. Now, by the time we get to World War Two, we could definitely say at this point, right, that as a result of World War Two, we get the United States as a world power. Definitely after World War II, this is a fact, right? The US as a world power. And we could argue that that continues, right, to the present, at least for now. That trend towards world power, however, we can go back to a period in the late 1890s, right? There's this period, I'm going to put it here, between 1890 and World War One. This is the period of American imperialism. And American imperialism, let's see if I can, let me choose a different pen here. So this period of American imperialism, of course, includes the war of 1898, which is the first sort of global war that the US gets involved in, otherwise known as the Spanish American War. So this is the war that brings Hawaii into the United States. This is the war that sees the US invade Cuba and annex Puerto Rico. This is the war where the US takes the Philippines and Guam. And so this is the war in which the US as a world player, as a power to contend with, and a promising future world power, right? This is the war that basically begins that trend, right? So I'm gonna see if I can just to differentiate this. I'm gonna use some pencil here. I'm gonna leave this there just to signify that it leads to, right? Leads to. There we go. And then, of course, not only does 1945 bring about the US as a world power, but from that point forward, right, we then have this competition with the Soviet Union known as Cold War. And from that, we also get the space race. And of course, with the Cold War, this is where we find Korea, the Korean War, Korean conflict, Vietnam, and other things, etc. Um, with the end of World War II, we also see the rise of the civil rights movement. And the civil rights movement, although we use the term civil rights for this period after World War II, this civil rights movement is in fact um, the later civil rights movement, meaning there is an earlier civil rights movement right around the 1890s. And that civil rights movement, right around, let's see if I can use this one again. I'm going to put this here, extending roughly to World War One. I'm going to put early civil rights. And so during this period, we see women gain the right to vote. We see during this period the things like child labor laws and all that, part of the progressive era. But we also see the establishment of the African American civil rights movement, right? This is where Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, this is when the NAACP and other civil rights organizations are actually founded. It's not until the late 1940s and 1950s that we begin to see this movement rise to national prominence as the civil rights movement. But they are connected. And so this early civil rights movement of the early 20th century, late 19th century leads to the civil rights movement post World War II. Now, there's a lot of things we can add here. There's many changes in American society, many aspects of international politics. 1945 is when the United Nations is founded, and so it's the first time we have an actual effective international organization, and we get global politics. Prior to that, we have the League of Nations, so we could talk about League of Nations followed by the United Nations. And we could even begin in 1945. This is also when we see the beginnings of what will become the European Union. It's also a post 1945 effect of World War II. And so all of this is things that we're going to talk about, but this is basically the the scheme of things that we have to work with. So I would like you to add this to your notebook, right? You can use your textbook to look at all the particular things, but basically I want you to put down a grand timeline of the course leading all the way to the present. And so here in the present, we can talk about sort of the 1970s, the end of civil rights of the formal civil rights movement. We have, of course, the 1980s and the 1990s, and then by the time we get to the year 2000, right, 2001, we get the War on Terror, 9/11, and the War on Terror. And so that's another um, series of events that you can add also. Truthfully, though, although we will probably get to the War on Terror, we're not going to get much past that because we just don't have enough time in this class. And so you can do this however you want. But basically, using different colors, um, try to show me that you understand the different periods and the different concepts that we are going to discuss in this class and how they, in a temporal fashion, in this timeline, right? From 1860 basically to the present, how they fit in. And then I want you to call that the grand timeline of AMH 2020, and then you can put that here, right? So we would add that. So you want the title of whatever content it is, right? If it's notes, if it's timelines, if it's a flow chart, and then you want the page number. And so in this case, we're calling that the grand timeline. Of AMH 2020. And that would be on page number 4. I just realized that I didn't want to do that yet, but it doesn't matter. Because one of the things that I want you to do is to add in here the the course calendar. I want you to have the course calendar here. And so maybe what we'll do is we'll use the inside flap here, the inside of the first page, right? We're going to call this the course calendar. And what I'm going to do, you can do this in a number of ways. If you look in module 1, week 1 module, you'll notice that there is a course calendar there. That course calendar has the dates of all the assignments and everything that will be due this semester. It'd be great if you have it in the notebook so that this becomes your primary resource. And so what I'm going to do here is instead of making a list, and you can just make a list. But I'm going to do something that's slightly more useful for me. And I'm going to make an actual calendar. Let me show you. This should take me just a couple of minutes to do. But basically, I'm going to give myself 3 lines per week. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. So there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to add one more down here. There's always some after effect. We're going to end the week on Saturday. I'm going to begin the week on Sunday. So, okay. So this would be Friday. This would be Thursday. This would be Wednesday. This would be Tuesday. And then, oh, well, there you go. So that would be Monday. Too much space there. So Monday gets a lot of space. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay. So basically, this class began on Wednesday of this week, as you all know, which was the 13th. So this is the beginning of the semester. If we go down, we find here's the 20th, the 27th, then it'll be June 3rd, followed by June 10th, June 17th, and June, that would be 24th, but actually class ends on the 23rd. So let's put it here, 23rd, put a diamond on that just to signify that it's beginning of class, beginning of classes, beginning of term, put here end of term. 23rd is also the day of the final exam. So I'm just going to put that here, final exam. And the 3rd is the day of the midterm. So midterm exam. Okay. And then we have the research project. All right, I don't know if I've pulled this. I keep pulling it towards me because otherwise it's too far. But your last research project assignment is due on the 22nd of June, right? So on the 22nd of June, you have your research project part 3. And then on the 21st is your notebook turn in. This is 5 of 5. And then, so if we go backwards from here, right? So this would be 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20. And then this would be 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, June 13th. And so the 14th would be the notebook 4 of 5, which is due. And then on the 7th is when your research paper, research project part 2. This is the annotated bibliography. And then in, let me see. I'm looking at my screen over here. I'm bringing up the course calendar so I don't get these dates wrong. Right, so we have the midterm on the 3rd of June. Right, so then this is the 2nd, this is the 1st, so this would be the 31st of May, and that is when the notebook 3 of 5 is due. This then would be the 24th of May. This is when notebook 2 of 5 is due. And then this coming week on Tuesday the 19th, notebook 1 of 5 is due. And I'm going to open that up as soon as I upload this particular video so that you have it. Okay. So then this would be the 18th. This is the 17th. And on the 17th, this coming Sunday, from the day of recording, this is when your research paper or research project part 1 is due, right? And that's it. That's the entire semester right there, guys. So 22, 23, 28, 26, 25, 29, 30th, 4, 5, 6. There's our calendar. If we can go through this. Again, if you use a little bit of color, you can highlight this. So here's the notebook projects, notebook project, notebook project, and then here is the, oh, forgot one. Notebook project. This looks better in person than on screen, I think. Here is the research project due, part 1. Here's research project part 2, research project part 3. And then we have the exams. So for the exams, I'm going to just highlight the day itself. So if you have better colors, then it'll work better for you. So I'm going to add here the course calendar. And this would be page 1. This would be page 1. Technically, often you don't have a page 1, but I kind of wanted to put this over here and then the timeline after that. It doesn't matter. As long as the title is correct with the content and as long as the page number is correct with the content. That's basically what I want to see in the table of content. Um, and you're free to organize this, however. So for Tuesday's May 19th assignment, what I want to see from you is the notebook. And here I would put your full name. This is AMH 2020 A6065. My name is Professor Delise. And then the name of the course itself, which is U.S. History. Um, 1877 to the present. And the last thing, this is summer 2026. And that should give you all the information you need for later on to remember what class was this, when did you take this class, who you took it with, what was the name of the class, all the pertinent information that you might easily forget later on. Now it's on there. And on a week-to-week basis, my videos will most likely go up on Sundays. Sundays will be my video production day, and so on Sundays when I will begin uploading the videos. There is a delay with video because I have to render the video. The video has to be posted. I'm using YouTube, and then posted back onto the web course. So it's a multi-step process even after I'm done recording. And truthfully, I don't have that much experience with this stuff. So I'm doing my best here, and hopefully it'll get better. I will try to make it better. And I look forward to see what you guys do with your notebooks. Now, how am I going to grade this? Well, the assignment itself, I'm going to share my screen here. Let's look at, let's go to this screen over here, and let's go to the assignments. Okay, so the first assignment, notebook project, assignment 1 of 5. This assignment will go live today, and this assignment says, right, that this is what you're being graded on. Okay, you are being graded on getting the composition notebook, setting up the notebook as prescribed. So in other words, table of contents, the first 2 pages of content, the timeline, the course calendar, which you can do however you want to do it. And that you've left enough room for enough content, so you have at least 2 pages of the table of contents, that you're doing your page numbers correctly, that you're giving each of the content pages an actual title to the page, and that you're writing those titles and page numbers in the table of contents. That's basically what I'm asking you to do in all this information here. Okay. And then what I want you to do is to take pictures of your um, work. Take pictures to prove to me that you did the work. And if we go to the notebook project instructions, I'll show you. This is what it looks like. Basically, you take pictures of the pages that are relevant to this particular assignment. So in this case, actually always the table of contents, but in this case, the the first page, the course calendar, the grand timeline. That's what I want to see, that you have basically done those things, and that you have put your last name with the page number count in the upper corner of each page. And so what you will then do is make a note, an album, and write your name as the album title. And when I say make an album, I'm talking like whatever album you use on your phone. If it's Google Photos or Apple Photos or um, whatever you're using, just create a an album that has your name on there, so I know whose work this is. Um, and then all you have to do is upload that work. Um, Excuse me, upload the pictures to your album. Make sure that that's all there is in the album is just your notebook work, and then bring those that URL. So you're going to share, right? So in this case, I can I can share through the link, and so I can copy the link, and then on the actual assignment, let me go to the assignment itself. So in the assignment itself, you'll see the instructions here. And one second. There it is. And so you'll put in the URL to your link. So if I add this here, paste it, oh, my bad. If I go back to this, copy link, go back to the assignment, paste, and so it'll provide the link to that album directly. And that's what I want you to do for this assignment. And then you don't have to submit the link again. You don't have to create a separate album each time. You just add to the same album. And then I'll check the link once a week. So you know that on those dates, I will be checking the links. Okay. And and that's the goal. And I should be able to see the album of the pages that you have uploaded. Okay. So I understand that this might seem a little confusing. I've tried to make it as explicit and as possible. And I know that this is something new for a lot of you, but at the same time, I'm just asking you to do your work in a notebook, and I'm just asking you to format the notebook in a certain way so that we can all basically follow along what we're doing. Um, and I'm giving you credit, basically. I'm giving you points for the work that you do. That's work that you should be doing anyways. That's work that you should be doing to study, right? This would be the same as if I was asking you to do quizzes online, except that I'm making you do it by hand um, on a notebook. And I think that that will be more helpful in the long run for you, believe it or not. So I'll leave you guys there. I think that our next video is going to basically deal with this here. I'll probably update that tomorrow on Saturday to deal with the Civil War and Reconstruction. And then we're going to talk about westward expansion, the Indian Wars, and get into industrialization. And we'll end this essentially with the rise of American imperialism. Okay, so this will be the next video, then this area here of industrialization, westward expansion, and then we get to American imperialism, the War of 1898. And then after that, World War I, the interwar years, World War II, and then Cold War. And before we know it, it's the end of the semester. So it's going to go quick, guys. I'll leave it there. Thank you guys for listening, and let me know if you have any questions. Just send me a message. Thank you very much.